Hello, my name is Mark Gibson, and you're listening to the podcast version of the Teagasc Signpost Series, a weekly webinar that promotes and examines sustainability in Irish farming. Hello, and you're very welcome to this morning's Signpost webinar. We hope you're keeping safe and well wherever you're joining us from today. As Europe and Ireland grapple with record-breaking temperatures this summer, we're seeing firsthand the effects of a rapidly changing climate. And for those of us who are working in agriculture, it is a reminder of the importance for us to rethink how we grow our food. And today we're going to be discussing the practicalities of growing catch crops, and we're delighted to be joined by John Mahon, who is Signpost Tillage Advisor with Teagasc. Good morning, John. You're welcome to today's webinar.
I'm very well, thank you.
Great. And good morning, Cathal. How are you today?
Great, thanks, Mark. How are you keeping?
Great, mighty. The sun is shining here in the west, so we can't complain. So, John, you're going to be talking to us about catch crops today. Could you tell us a little bit about your own background?
I'm around a while. I've been involved in agriculture, mainly in the tillage sector, since college. I'm in Teagasc for the past 3.5 years or so. I'm currently working as a Signpost Tillage Advisor on 10 tillage demonstration farms around the country. I previously I joined Teagasc to finish out a grassweeds EIP, the ECT project. And prior to that, I was 22 years a private consultant, mainly doing agronomy work, and I was involved with sales of crop software for a UK company.
Excellent. So you have a wide and varied career background. So you're well qualified anyway to be talking to us some more this morning about catch crops. So, John, if you're happy, we'll let you take over there, and we'll chat to you after the presentation.
Thanks for the opportunity, actually, to speak on the webinar today. The catch crops, cover crops end of things was on last week with Richie Hackett and Bridget Lynch on the research side of it. So my brief, I was kind of asked to maybe approach it from a different side, from the farmer practicality side of growing those catch crops. So it's with that in mind, I've prepared today's webinar. And I suppose on that point, the new water EIP, there's been a huge uptake on it with 1,300 applicants. And many of those will be growing catch crops for the first time. So it's with that in mind. I know I've been growing catch crops for 10 years myself on my own farm, but I know at the start there's a lot of things I'd like people to have said to me at the time and maybe given me a helping hand. So it's with that in mind I prepared today. So quickly we'll move on to today's webinar. So I've broken it into a number of parts, and at the start, I do need to just go through a little bit about why we should consider growing the catch crops, and what species mix do we need to grow, because that's quite an important part of what they're going to do for you. I'll spend a little bit of time then on the sowing equipment and the timing itself. I'm going to talk about destruction methods, even though there's very little research available on it, and just a little bit on the cost of growing it. I know Richie Hackett covered this a little bit last week, but I would like to put it back up there again, that there are a number of names out there. Catch crops, some people call them. I'm inclined to slip into calling them cover crops. They're also called green manures, but essentially they all do the same thing. Catch crops was originally given it because they were capturing nutrients in the soil and preventing them from leaching, and the cover crops were, as Richie said last week, originally kind of from the plains of America with the Dust Bowls, but there's more to it than that. And green manures are literally to bulk up and release nutrients for the benefit of the next crop. They're all essentially the same, and all fulfill the objectives to a greater or lesser extent. So I'm only just throwing up this slide here just to give an idea of where we might be talking about. So on the map on the right are essentially the grain growing areas of Ireland. And just to put it in perspective of kind of numbers, On the left-hand side are the 2024 breakdown of the different cropping types. So if you look at the left-hand side on the yellow and the grey, spring barley and winter barley represent more than half of the area in Ireland. And then with other cereals, spring cereals, it would be where you probably earmark where they might go. Um, so with just a very rough figures and estimated cropping, we're in or around 340,000 hectares this year, a drop from 348. Potentially the two areas for catch crops are that short cycle after the early harvest of the winter barley crops, in which the combines have started to roll in big time this week, which is quite early for the harvest. Winter oats actually will be starting probably around here in Carlow next week. And I saw a little bit of winter oilseed rape someone tried that's not ready yet. So again, there'll be an area there where people might try a little bit of catch crops when the winter barley straw is removed in the next week or so. But predominantly the area for spring cropping would be roughly it's working out at maybe 40% of the area, possibly with spring barley, spring oats, spring beans, and that area then, can come up to maybe 140, 150,000 hectares. For the actual sown areas at the minute, it's hard to work out, but we did some earlier this year based on seed sales. We came up with maybe roughly 30,000 hectares. The new 1,300 applicants for the water EIP. There's no actual figure on how many hectares is in that, but if it happened to be 10 hectares on average, it would be 1,300. If it was 20 hectares on average per person, 26,000 hectares. So roughly speaking, I'd say we're probably sitting at about 50 or 60,000. But to me, the big game changer probably came how people are considering it is that with the nitrates directive, there was a rule change in 2022, and it was a very good, well thought out plan designed to protect water quality from pollution with agricultural sources. Quite tricky on the ground to do, but the rule is that we must establish green cover on land which will not be winter sown before 31st of October. So it applies to all spring sown ground. It is compulsory. We have to shallow cultivate or roll in certain circumstances within 10 days of the baling of straw or of the harvest, and within 14 days of the harvest in all other circumstances. That proves quite tricky in a broken harvest. Now, the whole idea of it is that you get natural regeneration of green cover on the land. So once you leave the 20-25% area for ground nesting birds, all of the other is basically deemed to be in natural regeneration. So for me, the game changer is that this land, at least some of it, should be an opportunity to grow a bigger density of green material and get greater benefits from that. And I suppose some of the benefits I'm going to list out here, some farmers will be interested in, some will say, oh, like this one, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But we do have obligations for our 2030 reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. Those on the left-hand side there are the MAC 11 measures which relate to tillage ground and cover crops and straw incorporation are within that. So the other area is that with straw incorporation, and those were the national pathway targets for those for 75,000 hectares of cover crops. And as I say, we're probably around 50, 55 at the moment. The straw incorporation measure we had a huge take up in that, which was announced just before the crops open day here, 66,000 hectares. And that's only counting oilseed rape and cereals. We also have all legume straw, which is always most likely chopped as well. And there's over 13,000 hectares of that. So we're probably up around 80,000 hectares realistically of straw chopping. But in the cases where you have straw chopped and you must incorporate, and with the natural regeneration, if you're pulling a disc harrow or a tine harrow through it, it's an ideal opportunity to put out the seed as well. So um, the other part that not many talk about, and it's becoming more and more important going forward, are that many companies are out there with sustainability projects, particularly the drinks industry, and they recognize and include the catch crop measure as one of their incentivized payments. So that's quite important. Another, I suppose, benefit of growing catch crops or potential benefit is to reduce nitrogen inputs on the farm. Richie spoke at length at this last week on the webinar. What I would say on it is it's in conjunction with other measures. So all of the other measures that I've listed there are all important to reduce nitrogen input. So it can be part of a programmed approach on the farm, uh, in incorporating it with the use of organic manures and straw incorporation. But having your soils healthy in the first place and having your fertility right, it's most important. It is very, very dependent on soil sowing dates and biomass, as I'll show later on. It's also dependent on the species mix, and overwintered weather is a big variable. So if you're late sowing and have the wrong weather, it can be quite a small payback. Destruction dates effect, I'll deal with that later on as well. To improve water quality, and again, this is how the catch crops are such a big part of the water EIP. Any of the pictures there on your screen, we have seen in the past, and it's horrendous to see soil erosion. There's no dust bowl on the top left there, but there are cases where you have a lot of soil erosion. And again, water lying in areas. It's if you can do anything with catch crops to improve the drainage of that soil and hold the soil in place, it's a huge benefit, and that's why it's such a big part of the water EIP. I won't be shy about it. To obtain financial aid, I have written down here, and many people have entered this just to try and improve their soils and do something about the water quality in their area, but also for a payment. And the payment is extremely important, as I'll show on when we get to costings. The payments are quite generous at 229 per hectare or 92 per acre for the overwintered, and then the short term between the say the winter barley that's coming out at the moment is 173 per hectare or €70 an acre. The acres, anyone that's in acres existing, it's 173.20 per hectare or €70 an acre. There is one big difference there. There's a maximum of 20 hectares allowed in the acres, and many people who grow cover crops and see the benefit of them grow more than that, and it's an ideal opportunity for them to put that extra area of catch crops into the water EIP. I won't go in any great detail. You could spend an entire webinar talking about the soil health and benefits of catch crops, cover crops, but they are shown to improve the soil structure, and naturally, if you're bringing back material into the ground, you're increasing the soil organic matter. They're very good at nutrient retention, water retention, and making land more trafficable. What I'm talking about there, the water retention end of it, is when you get droughts. I'm on Carlow, and we're on very light sandy ground, and when we do get a pinch of weather in May on spring barley, we do need a little bit more moisture retained in the soil. Many farmers will tell you that they're easier to cultivate and reduce fuel consumption when you go into plough in early spring versus where there's overwintered stubble. They are a little bit easier to cultivate. There are numerous cases where the catch crops are helping to break pest and disease cycles, which I won't go into now. I worked in the ECT project on weed suppression. We were using different cover crop mixes to either suppress the weeds or encourage the weeds to grow between two cash crops. So we were actually manipulating the species mix to either flush out weeds or suppress weeds. And the final one there is what many farmers grow to provide winter grazing for livestock. So just on that point, AgNav was launched at the Crops Open Day, and there's lots of talk there about can we be carbon neutral? Are we carbon neutral in a tillage situation? So on the right hand side, cover crops is a huge, huge part of that whole balance towards carbon neutral. So I'll move on now just to talk a little bit about the species and the species mix do I grow, because this whole area can be, well, it's really important, but it can become quite confusing for many farmers. There are lots and lots of seed options out there. You can buy numerous mixes as straights. You sow them individually or in a mix. A mix is probably the better way to go, or many of the pre-mixed options. And all of the major seed companies out there will have their own mixes, pre-mixes, and will have the species mixes available straight. And I'm sure there are more than are on the screen there, but even for the organic growers, the Fruit Hill Farm do a great job there as well. But what I would encourage people is that if you go on to Bug Crop or DLF or Germinal on the screen there and look at their website, there's lots and lots of information there on the species mix and what might best suit. One really important major improvement to our whole seed, there was a problem possibly that we might be importing the likes of blackgrass or sterile brome from other countries with seed mixes. There's a new cover crop higher voluntary standard scheme in place with all of the Irish Seed Trade Association companies, and they give in a guarantee that they're blackgrass, sterile brome, and wild oats free. So it's really worthwhile buying a mix from those. On the mixes themselves, I suppose we broadly can put them into 4 seed categories, and this is the normal way to do it for, I suppose, ease of management in one case, but also to avoid running into problems with particularly, say, the brassicas. They're all grouped together there to stop running into problems with club root build up in soils and the likes of that. The one major part that I would say for anyone before they start is to know your rotation, know what your break crops are. So naturally, if you're in an oilseed rape as your main break crop on the farm, take a long, hard look at which brassicas you're going to use. Are you going to use brassicas in your mix? They are the ones that bulk up normally and are quite important in a mix. But if it means that you may build up club root on your farm, they're best avoided. Smart radish is there on the list. It's said to be club root resistant or tolerant. So that has been a big improvement. It's only recently introduced. Likewise, if you go look at the cereal grasses side of things, like if you grow oats a lot as a break crop or grow it for a particular reason on your farm, then best avoid oats in your cover crop mix then as well, to avoid building up the likes of oat mosaic fires. So same with forage rye. Rye has become popular now. If you're growing rye on the farm, it would be best avoided. Similar legumes, if you're using beans as your main break crop or an intercropping pea bean mix, best avoided. So a little bit of common sense on the break crops will just keep you out of a bit of trouble in the future. I'm just putting down this slide from the point of view that many don't kind of think about what you want it to do. Many will enter a scheme, go in, buy the cheapest mix they can and head on with it and not really get the full benefits of what they can actually do. So I've just written down a couple of different reasons maybe that you might actually do this. So soil regeneration or as a nutrient enhancer. If you want to fix nitrogen, your soils could be in really good health. So I wanted to fix nitrogen to provide it for the next crop. If you are grazing with animals, there's certain species choice to go with, or if you are doing it as an IPM cultural control method for, say, the likes of weeds that I said, you will have a particular choice. So again, try and match up these species mix to your end goal. If you were doing soil regeneration, you need vigorous deep rooting. It's pointless putting in, say, something that grows on top of the ground or quite light, like Phacelia or vetch or something like that. So again, it's mix and match and know what you're trying to do. Like if soil nutrient enhancer, some scavenger like rye would be great. Um, Put it in with some brassicas with large biomass and a deep root as well. Tillage radish should be very good at deep rooting and breaking up the soil as well. So again, put a little bit of thought into what you're trying to do. The suppression of the weeds, the allelopathy effect of particularly oats, is really, really good at suppressing weeds, rye to a lesser extent. There's biofumigation properties then as well on some of them, particularly mustard and buckwheat. But again, just mix and match and try and decide what you want to do. Use the opportunity to best get your soils and everything in right. Um, so what I've written down, make sure your choice of mix is suitable to your end use. Ask for help if you need it. Anyone in the seed companies or your advisor will have experience. So, just ask people for their opinions. What do you use? How do you find it? Um, and how is the management of it as well? I'm really adamant here to put down don't purchase seed based only on price because some of the mixes are quite expensive. Um, there is a big variation, but don't for the sake of it go for the cheapest one. You may end up with the cheapest one, but do put a little bit of thought into it, because it could have consequences in the future, particularly for the likes of club root, if you are an oilseed rape grower. Um, this might sound very, very obvious, but you'd be surprised at the number of people who don't put enough thought into this. When you have your seed requirement, work out the seed rate, work it out from, say, the chart there that's available, but there will be an individual seed rate on the bag. Work out how much seed you want and order it because as recently as yesterday evening, I was talking to a farmer and he said, God, I have the winter barley cut there now. It's after doing really well. It'll be baled next week. I suppose I better order the seed. So it's many people go in on the day and everyone comes in on the same day and there's no seed. So it's a really obvious one. I'm just also pointing out there, think about what equipment you'll use to sow. So, for example, on the seed, look at the different seed rates there. So the likes of fodder rapes and stuff like that with 4 to 5 kilos, Phacelia 4 to 5 kilos, tillage radish 4 to 6 kilos, leafy turnip 4 to 6 kilos. They're tiny seed. But if you decide that you wanted to grow oats, which is 60 to 75 kilos. You know, unless you have a twin hopper seeder, that's going to be quite difficult to put peas, beans, rye, oats, and grow the fodder rape. So have a little bit of thought about that, or maybe it's a case of a contractor will do it, or go over the ground twice. But just put a little bit of thought into that because many people don't put enough thought into it. Just one really quick slide on agronomy because it's quite simple. Sow as early as possible, which we'll come to in a second. Early sowing is absolutely essential. Shallow cultivation, which is compulsory if we're to follow the nitrates rules, less than 10 centimeters, depending on the seed size that we've spoken about. The seed depth could be anything from 1.5 to 3 millimeters to getting close to to that 10 centimeters, depending on what seed type you have. So just a little bit of thought into that. I've written down the words fine, firm, level seed bed, and that's the most important part of it. Um, Quite similar to what you do for a grass seed mix. Um, this is essential. Rolling afterwards, you must roll. If you don't, you will not be able to conserve the moisture and have good soil seed contact. You'll also might be a haven for slugs. So just in the picture there, you don't have to have as an elaborate a roller as that. But the picture on the right hand side is unrolled and is a haven for slugs, and you will not have a very good result. Um, some people asked Cambridge roller, like the picture there, or a round roller. It doesn't really matter. Just once it's firm and able to conserve moisture. Um, I just wrote this because I ran into this problem myself. If you are coming behind the straw chopper and you do have a large volume of straw, there's a thing called pinning with it. If you're coming along with, say, the likes of a disc harrow, you see in the picture on the bottom right there. So the disc can literally run along the top of it, and it's quite difficult to get the seed in and up and running. And a really obvious one, don't apply chemical or organic fertilizer or manures. That kind of defeats the whole purpose of trying to mop up nutrition in the first place. And it doesn't need it.
John, just on that's
Yeah.
where you are incorporating straw. Any advice on that specific issue?
The choice of machine, which I'll come to now in a second,
Okay.
we'll get over that. Yeah. The equipment itself, again, there's a plethora of people out there on looking in, and they all have different methods and means of putting it in. I suppose I'll just show a few examples of it as we're going through it. But the one thing, they have to be capable of shallow sowing with minimum cultivation. It's not a one pass power harrow job. There are farm drills used, but they're of a different type. I'll show now. Tine or disc cultivator with a seeder on it is the most commonly used and the most normal. Um, direct drill, direct drills are capable of putting them in, which I'll show as well. The choice, I'm just saying here, it depends on what's available on the farm, and it doesn't have to be expensive. A decent tine cultivator or a decent disc harrow are well capable. Decide how you get a seed, buy a seed box, put it on it, fit it on it. There's different ways and means on a farm. It doesn't have to be expensive. But if it is going to be a hassle and you don't have uh, the labor, which is particularly an issue around harvest time, hire a contractor or get a neighbor or someone who has a setup. It's a pointless exercise missing the beat. Um, we are under the number of days after harvest for the nitrates rules, but also if you lose time, you're not going to have the biomass. I'm just going to show a couple of examples of those machines here and just make a couple of comments on it. Tine of this drill is, I'd say, 90% plus of everything that's sown is sown with them. On the left-hand side, we've two tine machines. Again, depending on what you're sowing into, the one on the top right there is an uncultivated stubble. So it's doing a lovely job and it's getting it in. If you have, I call it a poor baling job done in front of it and a lot of loose straw is left on it, tine drills tend to do a lot of dragging of straw. But if you have the right setup, the straw can actually pass through the tines. A little bit back to your question, Mark. The disc is generally does a better mixing job. If you can see in the top right hand side there or the bottom right. Both of those are discs, and again do quite a good job of mixing up. The only place they kind of run into trouble is if there's a big volume of chopped straw and they run along on the top of it. But otherwise, that's generally quite a good job. I've just thrown up a couple of examples here that I've come across. On the top two pictures there are actually they're normal serial seed drills. Um, the guy on the top left there has a tine drill on the front linkage of the tractor. So he's actually doing a cultivation before he hits it. So that's nearly overkill, but an excellent job. Um, and the guy on the left-hand side, that's a normal Lemken drill. The bottom left is a direct drill, and that actually can do a fine job. And the bottom right is a Duncan direct drill as well, which will go directly into it. That's a oilseed rape straw, just for the purpose of explaining where it is. The trouble with any of these four machines is they'll be a lot heavier on diesel and pulling and more expensive if you have to get someone in to do it. So the expense has gone up. Outside of that, there are all sorts of combinations invented for doing this, and some of them are adaptations of grass seeding. The bottom left is a 9-box grass seeder. The bottom middle is again for direct seeding grass seed, and the bottom right is a cross roller with a seed box on it. So again, there are different. The top right there is a Sumo subsoiler with a seed box. So again, the different people do different things. I'm just going to throw up this because it's something that has been mentioned. That is it possible that we could sow some catch crops prior to harvest or into the standing crop or just as it's been harvested. Now there's next to no research available on this, and there are different methods that farmers try. The one thing that cropped to my mind was that there's no cultivations if it actually happened, and they're very moisture dependent. Those are pictures. Now, all three of those machines are in the US. The left-hand side there is very, very elaborate with a horse drill box on the back of a combine. I don't know how you'd even contemplate trying to watch what you were doing there. And the others, one is behind and one is in the front. I did come across this machine recently, where it's the seed header of an axial flow combine, case axial flow with a seed box and distributor heads pre-done on it. I will make one comment of one signpost farmer I have. He said, "Well, I've enough to watch at the harvest without worrying about sowing the cover crop as well." So again, I suppose different people will have different means. If that bottom right hand corner worked, again, it's a huge saving on labor and expense as well. But we'll see how that goes. The timing of sowing, the most critical aspect, as Richie pointed out, was as early as physically possible. So I'm just appealing to the organizational skills. Like if you have strong corporation measure fields, prioritized immediately behind the combine, you can come in straight away onto those. So early morning while waiting for dew to clear. Now this is old hat to some of the viewers out there that are doing this, but just be organized. While you're waiting for the dew to clear before you go combine and be in there. Livestock straw clients, prioritize them to get their bales out of the field for where you need to come in with the catch crops. Moving the straw to the headlands, get the main parts of the fields done. And as Richie showed last week, the difference in sowing date is vast, absolutely vast. It literally the difference from a July sown, July 30th to the August 18th there is nearly half the amount of biomass, and the same again in September. So that's critical. These are pictures just from some of the one of the signpost farms. And again, just to reiterate, on August 2nd sowing with two different species mixes. The difference between August 2nd and August 29th was nearly a halving of the amount of fresh weight and kgs of nitrogen uptake for those crops. On the same farm the following year, it was following winter barley, so we just sowed a number of different types just to have a look see. Their biomass figures, we won't go in any great detail to them. Only there's two things I want to point out here. There's a Phacelia vetch tillage radish mix, which had a huge biomass, and the forage rape leafy turnip was a good bit lower than it. That was sown on July the 26th. Had that been the end of August, those two would have been completely reversed. And the second point I'd like to make on it, the natural regeneration, he left a piece undisked with no cultivation and one disked. And the difference 0.22 to 0.69 is the reason why the nitrates directive came in to try and establish this green cover. You uncultivated stubble does not generate much green cover. So that's the whole idea of coming in with a like cultivation. Destruction of cover crops. So the first thing I'm going to say here is there's very, very little data available on these. Now that position is changing with as Bridget and Richie alluded to. There's work going on cover crops, and part of that will be on the destruction methods. A couple of different methods I'm going to show. The time of destruction is like crystal ball stuff in the springtime. If you go too early, you can undo all of the good nitrogen that you've lifted out of the ground, and it might not be released back to the crop if you can't get back in to do your ploughing or whatever. If you leave it too late, you have a green bridge effect, where literally the likes of barley yellow dwarf Irish the aphids can literally move from the green material of one onto the green material of the other. Biomass and the type of catch crop. So that'll have a huge influence on both how you destroy it and how long it's going to take to break down. I wrote here climate change effect on these because we are predicted going forward to have milder, wetter winters. So this may have an effect on both the volume of cover crop that you have to deal with, and also when you're actually going to be able to get in to do any cultivations afterwards. So I just, the other part of it there, the next commercial crop, if you are on a malt and barley situation, you need to know your likely sowing date for whatever part of the country you're in and your nitrogen requirement. The last thing you want is very late destruction of a cover crop, followed immediately by your crop and a very late release of nitrogen to affect your malting. On the different methods, as I said, there's natural methods. Maturity is generally not regarded much. Frost kill can be good or bad. Generally only affecting the likes of Phacelias and vetches and stuff like that. Grazing is the more normal method, and you may need to follow up that with some Roundup or something along those lines. Mechanical rolling in the frost. This picture in the center there, the red tractor there, was last January when we had the snow, and the plant in the center there was literally destroyed. Generally, it's quite difficult to destroy the brassica crops, but we had a really, really good result after that rolling. And we have an experiment going on that with no glyphosate on that crop, and I think it did an excellent job. The top right-hand corner is called a crimper roller, so it's on the front of that red tractor, which is a direct drill behind it. But the crimper roller literally just cuts the plants and knocks them down as it goes along. I suppose the obvious one, the plow down in the bottom left-hand corner, in combination with glyphosate. While I was doing some research for the webinar, the only data I could get from the UK was 81% of all people with cover crops use glyphosate over there, which is kind of a little bit worrying. We try and cut back on the amount of glyphosate we're using, but these methods can be hit and miss. I have made a matrix, and I'm stressing that this is my observations. There is no Irish research available, but these would be my observations, more so of what doesn't work as opposed to what does work. So as I said, the frost it's good on some of the weaker and the legumes, but I wouldn't rely on it for any of the brassica types. So it's probably what the whole point of it is, a combination of both natural and mechanical in cultivations. My final slide, you'll be glad to hear, our second last slide, Mark, because I know we're pushed on time there. Just a very, very simple table there of possible costs for the establishment and destruction of the cover crops. Now, some of the farmers out there are saying cultivation and planting, I do it less than €60 a hectare, probably 45, €50 a hectare, possibly with their own equipment. I have a contractor charge there, which is quite accurate there, about €75 a hectare. The rolling cost and the destruction, including the glyphosate. So we're coming out around 129, €130 a hectare to €150 a hectare, roughly. I've three example mixes because I mentioned there that there is a big difference in mixes. So mixes can be anything from €30 a hectare to over €70 a hectare. But roughly speaking, just to put it in context, the farmer's own machine, if he has his own machine and he's working away, probably about 160, €180 a hectare, up to 200, with a decent mix. And a contractor, again, 180 to about 220. Just bear in mind that the water EIP is €229 a hectare. So you will get all of the benefits, but there'll be very little money left at the end of the day. And that's why it's so important that these measures are there to be supported. So I'm going to conclude that for all those farmers out there that have cover crops and are new to it, well, you've probably identified the fields already at this stage where you want to go. Make sure to take a little bit of time to think about the end goal and the purpose, what you want to do with it. And on that basis, decide what the species mix will achieve it. Do always bear in mind the rotational restrictions and don't run yourself into trouble in the future. Obvious one, place the order, but I haven't my order placed yet, so I'm as bad. Service the equipment or book a contractor. Don't go looking for a fella on the day. It's not fair on him either. And I suppose the most important thing, be organized and sow it as early as possible. So I'd just like to thank all of the sponsors of the Signpost program. There are 65 partners on it, and it's we're delighted with their sponsorship.
That's great, John. Thank you. Really practical walk through there of catch crops, cover crops, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, I probably reverted it a couple of times.
Yeah. No, look, it's look, whatever works for people, I suppose. So if you could just maybe stop sharing your screen with us, then we can start looking at some of the questions. Before we get to the questions, though, I just wanted to bring up there. You mentioned about mixing different seeds and so on, and maybe the need for just you were saying just to think through how that's managed with the different seeding rates.
Mhm.
How can you maybe just elaborate on that for us a little bit and how that might be done successfully?
Various means, Mark. I suppose the obvious one is use seed types of the same size. And that's the really simple one. And most of those cover crop mixes that I put up would be all of the same size. So
Mhm.
for for example, a mix I commonly use myself, Phacelia, tillage radish, and what's the third one? Fodder Ray. Okay. So again, they're all literally the same size, in around the same rate. There's a rate on the bag. It's a premix from one of those companies. Um, the some people will go the kind of the cereal route, so they'll want to sow oats and something else. So I have I I know people who have gone out with a fertilizer spinner out on the bare ground with the likes of the oats or the rye or beans or spread them on the ground. Then they'll come along with their tine or their disc with the seed or for the small seed. So it is possible, but a little bit of you have to put a little bit of thought into it depending on what you want to do. Now naturally, the reason for that is they're trying to keep the cost down,
Mm.
and avoid some of the more expensive mixes. But it is possible, but you must think about the practicalities of it again. And again, like that one of those direct drills has a twin hopper system. So it was very simple. Put the big seed in one side, calibrated, put the small seed in the other side, and he just pulls through once. So it is possible, but just put a bit of thought into it. Um, thought is is I suppose the key.
Yeah, great. Okay. Given the time, we'll go straight into questions. Cathal, some really good questions coming through from our viewers this morning.
Yeah, some good technical questions. John, I suppose just start out, where are the seeds coming from? Are they coming from Ireland or are they grown outside?
Uh, the, the majority of seeds are all imported. They're mainly coming from the main European countries. But there's next to no seeds of that type grown in Ireland for climatic reasons more than anything. Um, so there was a there wa- I'll just say that there was a question mark over a lot of seed and were we going to import the likes of blackgrass or problems like that. So that voluntary scheme that the Irish Seed Trade Association stepped up to the mark and took that on. And I'd highly recommend people buy seed from a reputable source that can stand over that.
You mentioned climatic conditions. Is it not really possible then for us to grow them in the country, or is it?
Yeah, quite. It,
Yeah,
it is quite difficult for us, and
yeah,
and in the volumes that we would need as well. Yeah.
yeah,
So there are specialist seed companies who are producing this seed.
yeah. So you'll be confident enough. Some of the more reputable companies are
Yeah.
they're kind of filtering out those weed grasses or whatever may come in. Um, you mentioned clubroot and some potential diseases that could come in on with your management of cover crops. And I know from talking to tillage farmers, clubroot is something. It's almost someone said to me before. It's like the bloat of clover. Can you just talk a little bit about clubroot and I suppose take the fear out of it and how you can manage around it?
Yeah. No, clubroot affects brassicas. It's a root. Um, it's like a root rot type type of a disease. It can build up in soil. Okay, so it's soil borne and can build up in soil. So if you don't observe your normal rotation with brassicas, so say oilseed rape, if you were growing every fourth or fifth year, usually every fifth year, So if you grew oilseed rape continuously in the same field, you will build up this club root. Um, the fear is that if you are growing a brassica as a catch crop, okay, it's in for a shorter period of time in the ground as well. But that you're actually doing that continuum of continuous brassica in the ground. Then the fear is that you will build up club root. Now that that's smart uh, radish that I mentioned at the bottom of the table on the brassicas um, is said to be club root tolerant. There are sorry, from an oilseed rape point of view, they're building in genes into them club root tolerant, but again, it would be best to avoid it if you can. There's also no research behind it talk that if you mix a number of brassicas and others, if you went into a 7, 8, 10, 12 way mix, that you're actually diluting the effect. Now, there's no research to say that it is possible, but there's a dilution effect as well. I didn't mention there during it, but like some people are the normal would be about a 3 or 4 way mix. Um, you can go as low as 2, but there are people on 10 and 12 way mixes out there as well. There's no evidence that one is better than the other. It's whatever. It just adds another dimension to me of trying to work out seed rates and trying to get everything and not have it actually physically separating in a hopper as it's hopping along as you're sowing.
So I just in summary, I suppose oilseed rape, maybe stay away from brassicas. There's lots of other options, and if you're doing something like spring barley, just not to be continuously
Yes. Yeah.
brassica and just mix it up a little bit. So
Likewise for oats, it would be silly to sow oats as a cheap version of your cover crop if you do actually grow oats or supply someone with oats, because if you build up oat mosaic virus can build up as well, and with clubroot and oat mosaic virus, if you do get that, you're looking at 10 plus years before you can ever go back in there again with either of those. So it's really, really critical that you don't.
yeah. Here's a kind of a different type of one for you. Well, what can be done where yellow flag and rushes are taken over in low input pastures in the west of Ireland?
That's a really difficult one. Say that again. Yellow flag.
Yeah. So what can be? Yeah, yellow flag and rushes are taking over in low input pastures in the west of Ireland. So I assume someone's trying to grow a bit of tillage up there.
Maybe they're just trying to control yellow flag.
Yeah.
It's more a kind of a weed control question than cover crop, but I don't know the answer straight off. But whoever their local advisor is could check out maybe there are chemical options, but possibly mechanical options as well.
Yeah, it's usually associated with drainage issues, I think.
Yeah.
As well.
On the weed control one, you mentioned that you were looking at different species to suppress weeds. What were the main species you were using to suppress the weeds with the catch crops?
Yeah, so what I was hinting at there, basically, if you can grow enough bulky biomass, so if say the normal forage rape stubble turnip mix. Okay, if you had that in early enough, they're two very, very strong brassicas. They can grow quite bulky. So if you grow that type of a material, the particular case we were experimenting on was sterile brome, and the sterile brome underneath it literally got shaded out so fast and so quick with this aggressive brassica mix that it didn't get a chance to actually get going. It just literally didn't flush out. But in that particular case, we had a big seed bank under the ground. So where we put in a Phacelia vetch mix or something light and open, or even a mustard mix. The likes of that will allow plenty of air and whatever else. So literally, you're encouraging the seed bank to throw up the seeds and flush it out. So it depends on what you're trying to do. I would use the cover crops as a method of trying to flush out seed banks of weeds rather than try and suppress weeds. So.
Yeah. And when we're on the weed thing, I suppose, has there any work been done on desiccants like Spotlight been used instead of glyphosate?
Not that I'm aware of, no. And I would think there's no approval as well, which is
And
more
what about
important.
alternatives to glyphosate, John, or beyond?
No, there aren't, and I suppose my thoughts on it would be one, try and do it other mechanical methods that say that time when we came in the snow, um, but if you can, and just ease off on using glyphosate on those fields. You know, for a herbicide resistant point of view, you know, it's continuous use. So if the field is continuously getting glyphosate year after year for stubble cleanup or to break down a cover crop, like that's you're leaving yourself wide open to those species of grass weeds to build up resistance. So it's to break that cycle is what we're trying to do. So to answer your question, no, but if it's possible to do mechanical means, by all means, that should be done to try and ease off the use of glyphosate on the farm.
I suppose the pressure is on us to try and reduce those chemicals. So there's another question here around, I know you showed a slide on rolling there in the frost. Does that have an impact maybe on soil structure, or?
In that particular case, we had, I think, 5 or 6 days of -4, -5. Absolutely no impact under the ground. But very seldom. And as I mentioned, with methane predictions going forward, the likelihood is that we're going to have milder, wetter winters. So that's when you do a lot of damage under the soil with compaction. And the options of doing that type of mechanical destruction are going to be quite slim, to be honest with you.
Okay, John, and Cathal, we're at 10:30. I don't know where that hour went. John, you had us captivated there, and really, really practical advice there around cover crops. So thanks so much for your presentation and the research you put into for today's episode. Cathal, thanks so much for helping with the questions. I know you're going to be joined next week by Dr. Tom O'Dwyer, who's head of the Signpost Demo Farm Programme, and he's going to be talking about greenhouse gas emissions on signpost farms and the actions taken to reduce them. So I have seen a version of this presentation. I can say it's a very, very interesting results coming through there. So definitely one to tune in for. So look, until next Friday, stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you next week. So take care.
You've been listening to the podcast version of the Teagasc Signpost Series, the weekly webinar that promotes and examines sustainability in Irish farming. Don't forget to join us live every Friday morning for our latest webinar. For more, visit teagasc.ie. And you can also rate, review, and subscribe to the Signpost Series on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. I'm Mark Gibson, and thanks for listening.